There's a time where Richard Dawkins, on his Zoom camera, in an interview with some British news channel, he sat completely still, motionless, looked straight into the camera, and with a clear conscience said, "I would consider myself a cultural Christian." And I'm thinking here, I'm saying, okay, Richard Dawkins is one of the new atheists. He was called one of the four horsemen of new atheism back in the 2000s. And he was prancing around going, God is nonsense. The virgin birth is rubbish. You don't need Jesus to tell you what to do because he is not real. And if he is real, he's dead in a grave somewhere. And now Richard Dawkins in the 2020s is sitting there saying, I'm a cultural Christian. I think Christianity is good for England. And he said, I'd be sad if we started losing festivals like Easter for festivals from other cultures and other religions. So I'm thinking, not only is he a hypocrite, I'm thinking, why would you call yourself a cultural Christian if you've been so adamant that Christianity is nonsense? Because if it is nonsense, why would you want a culture of nonsense, right? But I don't think he actually believes that Christianity is nonsense. I think there's something deep down in him, deep down inside, that is saying Christianity actually is right on a lot of things. Is right on the sanctity of marriage, is right on the sanctity of life, is right on the value of free speech, of expression, of just basic rights like having private property. These are all fundamental ideas of the West that we get from Christianity. But also the idea of self-sacrifice. And I think Jordan Peterson has done a really good job at pointing this out in his own strange Jordan Peterson way, which is the Christian ethos is all centered around Jesus Christ, obviously, and his sacrifice. You see, Jesus was fully man, fully God, truly man, truly God, I believe. He came down from heaven, lived a perfect life and died a perfect death, and suffered more than any of us ever will. All for the joy set before him. And that idea of suffering for the good of humanity, you know, that's in its own little way, like in a cultural way, that's a good place that you want to be when individuals are saying, I'm going to sacrifice for the good of others, you know. So from a cultural perspective, Christianity is not nonsense. So that's why Richard Dawkins is trying to make the best of both worlds, saying, oh, Christianity is rubbish, but, you know, it's good. I like my Christian church. I like my Christian neighborhood. I like my Christian country. Yeah, you could say that. Well, Richard Dawkins is one of the reasons why England has really drifted away from Christianity, or he's been, rather, principalities and powers have used him to draw England away from Christianity. So I am going to make this proposition, and it is better to believe. I have a book here by Friedrich Nietzsche called Beyond Good and Evil. Now, he was a famous atheist and nihilist. He believed that there was nothing really good in life, that life was meaningless. You know, there's nothing written in a book somewhere that shows you how to live your life right, you know? And he wrote a famous poem, not in this book. He wrote a famous poem that he's known for. There's a quote taken out of that poem called God is Dead. And in that poem, it accounts basically this medieval village, I believe. If I recall, this medieval village has just found out the news that God is dead. And now they think, what does this mean? You know, God is dead and we've killed him. What do we do now? Because really the question is with that Nietzsche found, especially in Beyond Good and Evil, is if God is dead, if God isn't real, if we've killed him intellectually and ideologically, culturally, then where do we go from there? So that goes into our first point, which is that culture does not work if it abandons God. Now we're going to have to, in my little 16-year-old brain, we're going to have to shrink this into size. I'm just going to take you to one of the most immediate examples for me, which is the classroom, right? I go to a Christian school where we're based on Christian principles. We have rules that are based from the Bible and extrapolated from Christian thinking, right? For example, you don't lie about your homework. You don't lie about your tests. You don't cheat. Why? If you don't have that Christian idea, if you don't have that basic framework that we get from the Bible, then why wouldn't you? It's just for the good grades, you know? Or if you go down that rabbit hole, why would you even want to get the good grades? Why would you even want to get up in the morning to go to school, you know? It's all based on this idea that life has meaning. A culture that doesn't realize that life has meaning is going to crumble apart and die. So I'm going to tell you, your life has meaning, whether you believe it or not. And I do believe your meaning is written in a book. And it's a book that the author of that book is God. And yeah, he's used human writers to write it in lots of different books that have all been compiled into one. But if you just look at the Bible and you really test it and you scrutinize it, it still stands the test of time. And it will stand the test of time. No one has ever, no one will find anything wrong with it. Because it's the Word of God. It's perfect. And that tells you that your life has meaning. It's better to believe that your life has meaning. I can look at my own life, for example. All right, so I'm on the other side of the earth from where I was born. I was born in England. I was pretty well off, but right now, I'm not in England anymore. I'm in the United States of America, on another island in the United States of America, on the other side of the planet. Why? Well, because I believe my life has meaning. I believe that there's purpose for me being here. I believe that I have a calling here. My dad has a calling here. He's a pastor here, right? That's when you really look into the past and you look into the history of your life and you look at it through that lens of there is meaning to this, you start seeing things. Or for me, especially personally, seeing God has always been there throughout everything, throughout every trial, throughout every, in my, I can be ungrateful. I've had a very good life. I'm very well off. But in these little moments that feel difficult, that feel hard, and seeing God was right there. God let that happen for a reason, Seeing that your life has meaning is so, so important. And where do we go from there? So having the culture be meaningful, having the culture be surrounded in the Christian idea. Let's give it a paradox. Let's show the other side. I wake up tomorrow morning, there is no God, there is no meaning. I look at the mountains on one eye and I say, yeah, that was created by random chance, by lots of different, I don't know what they say anymore, chemical imbalances causing it. And that was caused by chemical imbalances, that was caused by chemical imbalances, that was caused by a chemical imbalance. And it was created by nothing, because that just makes total sense, right? Then what is my life? What is the point for getting up in the morning? Why am I worrying about schoolwork? Why am I worrying about being nice to other people? Why am I worrying about saying the right things? So you can go down that rabbit hole, and Nietzsche went down that rabbit hole, that's for sure. And he came out of that as it's a dark, dark world to live in when God is dead, you know. So how does that tie in for us just practically? Believing our life has meaning. For me, that's believing Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through him. And that one day, because of what he has done for me on the cross, I'm going to go to heaven because I've been declared righteous and clean, and I'm cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. How does that apply to me practically? Because that's a crazy statement for a teenager, right? Well, it gives me hope. And we need hope in these dark times. In times when people are mocking death. In times when there's more slavery right now in the world than there was at the height of the Roman Empire. When there's wars going on. When there's poverty and famine and injustice. And even just in my little school, there's all sorts of sin and sadness and corruption happening. Or just in the community around me. It gives me hope. Because I know that it's all going to be made right one day. And I know I have been given a task, and that is the Great Commission, to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and building God's kingdom here. That gives me hope. That gets me excited. That gives me a reason to talk in front of this camera and hope people are listening, and hope people interact with it or get challenged by it. Because it makes me know that there's someone, at least I know there is someone up there listening, you know. It says that God's going to take an account for everything we say, everything we do, everything we think. Now that gives me a reason to keep fighting. That gives me a reason to keep talking. That gives me a reason to wake up and try my hardest every day. Because I know God is by my side. And it's not because I'm trying to work my way into heaven. It's not because I'm trying to impress him in any sort of way. It's because I know what he did for me on the cross. And I know that's already been fully paid for. And I know that there's nothing I can do about it. I've trusted in Jesus. And I'm cleansed. I'm good. I'm pure. I'm in his book. That gives me a response of gratitude. And it's better to live life that way. It really is. And that's not saying that trials don't come. I mean, in fact, like when you become a Christian, they're more painstakingly obvious than ever. And, you know, for me, I've not really seen that yet, right? I haven't really seen difficulty. I haven't seen trials in the ways that so many Christians from around the globe, or even just around me, have. But like I said, I look into the future with hope. I look at it with saying, I know where I'm headed. The Christian idea is not what if, what if, what if. That is the world's problem. That's their worry. They're saying, what if this happens? What if that happens? The Christian idea is saying, even if, even if, even if. Now that is a life worth living. So to all you cultural Christians who say, oh yeah, you know, I vote Republican because I stand for Christian values. I'm not a Christian, but I like Christian values, you know. Or like Charlie Kirk stood for good Christian values that I don't really fully believe, but I appreciate it for society. Then I would challenge you. I'd say, how long are you going to be fake? Go on both sides. You need to commit. You need to believe. Not just agree with, believe. And the true meaning of belief. You know, in James it says, even the demons believe and they tremble and they shudder. True belief of a Christian is saying, I have this faith. And I'm going to put works to it. I'm going to show you my faith by my works. And that's what I try to do every day. That's what I try to, you know, that's what motivates me to get up in the morning, is to live out that faith, because I know what Jesus has done for me. I know what Jesus can do for you. So if you're teetering on both sides of the fence, and I challenge you, just pick a side and stick with it. Stop being fake. I'll tell you, it's better to believe. That's for sure. Thank you for listening.